Jack Morrison was just trying to get his daughter home safely through the worst blizzard Vermont had seen in years. But when he spotted a car trapped in the ice, he knew he had to help. Inside was Emily, shivering and scared, her expensive car useless against nature's fury. What Jack didn't know was that the woman he was saving wasn't just any stranded driver. She was Emily Stanford, heir to a billion-dollar fortune. She'd been running from her wealthy family's expectations, looking for a real connection in a world of fake smiles. That night, as Jack broke through the ice to rescue her, he also broke through the walls she'd built around her heart. Sometimes the most precious things come to us when we least expect them. But what secret was Emily hiding that could tear their newfound happiness apart? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning before the blizzard hit, Jack Morrison sat on the edge of his daughter's bed, gently shaking her awake. Sarah's stuffed penguin, Mr. Waddles, lay squished between her arms, its once pristine black and white fur now grey from years of love. "Time for school, sweetheart," he whispered, smoothing back her dark curls. Sarah, 8 years old and already too wise for her years, clutched Mr. Waddles tighter. "5 more minutes, Daddy." Jack glanced at his watch, his father's old Timex, the only inheritance he'd left behind. "Tell you what, if you get up now, we can make chocolate chip pancakes." One brown eye popped open. "With extra chips. Is there any other way?" The kitchen in their small rental house wasn't much. Worn linoleum floors, dated cabinets with loose handles, and a refrigerator that hummed too loudly. But it was home. Jack moved through the familiar space, gathering ingredients while Sarah perched on a stool at the counter, Mr. Waddles propped beside her. "Tell me the story again," Sarah said, measuring chocolate chips with more enthusiasm than accuracy. "Which story?" "About how Mom gave me Mr. Waddles." Jack's hand stilled. Over the mixing bowl, 3 years had passed since Lisa's death, but some moments still caught him off guard. He looked at his daughter. She had Lisa's eyes, her gentle spirit. "Well," he began, resuming his stirring, "your mum bought him the day we found out you were coming. She said every child needs a best friend, and she knew this little guy would be perfect for you." Sarah nodded solemnly, having heard this story countless times. "Because penguins are loyal and brave." "That's right, just like you." The pancakes sizzled on the griddle, filling the kitchen with warmth and the promise of sweetness. Outside, the Vermont morning was steel gray, threatening snow. Jack's phone buzzed with a weather alert, severe storm warning starting that afternoon. "Dad!" Sarah's voice pulled him back. "Do you think Mum would be proud of us?" Jack flipped the pancakes, buying time to steady his voice. "Every single day, baby. Every single day." The garage wasn't much warmer than the morning air when they arrived. Morrison Auto Repair had been his life for the past decade. A small operation, but honest work. The sign above the door needed repainting, and the office computer was ancient. But his customers trusted him. In a small town like Milbrook, that meant everything. "Homework first," he reminded Sarah as she settled into her usual spot in the office, Mr. Waddles keeping watch from her backpack. The space was tight but cozy, with a small desk for Sarah's after-school studies and walls covered in her artwork. The morning brought the usual parade of regular customers. Mrs. Henderson's ancient Volvo needed new brake pads. Tom from the hardware. Store's pickup had a mysterious rattle. Jack worked steadily, grateful for each job, even as he worried about the bills piling up on his desk. During lunch, he found Sarah teaching Mr. Waddles about fractions. "See," she explained to the penguin, "if you have 4 cookies and share them with Daddy, you each get 2. That's 1/2. Jack smiled even as his heart ached. She was growing up too fast, taking on too much understanding of their situation. Last week he'd overheard her telling Mr. Waddles they didn't need new shoes yet because Daddy was saving for winter tires. The afternoon brought darker skies and the first flakes of snow. Jack watched through the garage doors as the weather worsened. checking his phone for updates. The storm was intensifying faster than predicted. "Pack up, sweetheart," he called to Sarah. "We need to head home before this gets worse." Sarah gathered her things while Jack quickly closed up shop, securing tools and pulling down the heavy garage doors. The wind was picking up, driving snow sideways across the parking lot. In the truck, Sarah hugged Mr. Waddles close as Jack navigated the increasingly treacherous roads. "Daddy?" she asked, her voice small against the howling wind. "Are we going to be okay?" Jack reached over to squeeze her hand. "Of course we are. We've got each other, don't we? And Mr. Waddles too." She nodded, but her grip on the stuffed penguin tightened. Jack focused on the road, trying to pierce through the thickening curtain of white. They were still 20 minutes from home when he saw it, a luxury car, its sleek lines almost obscured by ice and snow, pulled off to the side of the road. Sarah pressed her face against the window. "Someone's in there, Daddy! Look!" Through the growing darkness, Jack could make out a figure in the driver's seat. The car was nearly encased in ice, and in these temperatures. He looked at his daughter, at the stuffed penguin that represented everything they'd lost and everything they still had. Lisa would have stopped. She would have helped. "Hold tight, sweetheart," he said, pulling over. "Looks like someone needs our help." Emily Stanford's fingers trembled as she reached for the fake ID in her wallet. Jane Smith. Such a perfectly ordinary name, nothing like the weight of Stanford that had defined her entire life. The driver's license was expertly crafted, arranged by the one person who understood why she had to escape, her grandmother's former housekeeper, Maria. 3 days ago, she'd sat in her father's mahogany-paneled study, listening to him outline her future as if she were a company merger, rather than his daughter. "The merger with Hamilton Industries depends on this, Emily," Richard Stanford had said, not even looking up from his papers. "Charles Hamilton's son is a suitable match. The wedding will be in June." 28 years of careful grooming hadn't prepared her for that moment. "Dad, I don't even know David Hamilton." "You'll have plenty of time to get to know him after the wedding." He finally looked up, his expression softening slightly. "Emily, you've always understood your responsibilities to this family. This isn't just about marriage. It's about securing the future of thousands of employees." But Emily had stopped listening, her mind racing to the conversation she'd had with Maria the night before. "Miss Emily," the older woman had said, pressing a small envelope into her hands, "sometimes we have to lose everything to find ourselves." Now, trapped in her frozen Mercedes on a rural Vermont road, Emily wondered if she'd lost her mind along with everything else the storm had caught. Her by surprise, the expensive car useless against nature's fury. She'd been trying to reach the small bed and breakfast where Maria's cousin worked, but the GPS had failed, and the ice had come so quickly. The cold was seeping into her bones, and her phone had died hours ago. Through the frosted windows, she could barely make out the endless curtain of white. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. She hadn't run away from a loveless marriage, only to freeze to death in the middle of nowhere. Emily pulled her cashmere coat tighter, though it offered little warmth now. The ID in her wallet seemed to mock her, playing at being normal, at being free, and look where it had gotten her. She thought of her mother, who'd spent decades perfectly coiffed and perfectly miserable, drowning her disappointments in charity galas and prescription pills. "I won't live that life," Emily whispered to herself, her breath visible in the freezing air. "I won't." But what was the alternative? The small trust fund she'd accessed, the one her father didn't know about, left by her grandmother, wouldn't last forever. The identity Maria had arranged would hold up to basic scrutiny, but she had no real work experience, no practical skills. What did a woman with 3 degrees from prestigious universities, but no real-world experience, have to offer? The wind howled louder, and Emily's thoughts drifted to the last real conversation she'd had with her grandmother, just months before she passed away. "The measure of wealth, my dear," Eleanor Stanford had said, holding Emily's hand in her hospital room, "isn't in what you have, but in what you give. Your father never understood that. Don't let him make you forget it either. A sudden beam of light cut through the darkness, and Emily's heart leaped. Through her iced-over window, she could make out the shape of a truck pulling over. For a moment, panic gripped her. Had her father's security team found her already? But then she saw a man step out into the storm, followed by what looked like a child. The man's voice carried faintly through the howling wind. "Hello? Are you okay in there?" Emily hesitated. Everything she'd been taught about stranger danger warred with her desperate situation. But there was something in his voice, concern, genuine human warmth, that made her respond. "I'm stuck," she called back. "The doors are frozen." She watched as he returned to his truck, emerging with what looked like tools. The child, a little girl, stayed in the truck, her face pressed against the window. There was no sleek black SUV following them, no earpieces or tactical gear, just a man braving a blizzard to help a stranger. As he worked to break through the ice sealing her door, Emily made a decision. Jane Smith she would remain, at least for now. The Stanford name, the billions that came with it, the gilded cage of expectations, she would leave it all behind. If she survived this night, she would find out who she really was, not who she'd been bred to be. The door creaked open, and strong hands reached in to help her out. "I'm Jack," the man said, his voice barely audible over the storm. "We need to get you somewhere warm. Can you walk?" Emily nodded, stumbling slightly as she stood. Through the swirling snow, she caught her first clear look at her rescuer's face. Kind eyes, worry lines around his mouth. A day's worth of stubble. No judgment, no agenda, just simple human kindness. "Thank you," she managed through chattering teeth. "I'm Jane." The lie felt strangely right on her tongue, like a key turning in a lock. As Jack helped her toward his truck, where a little girl clutched a worn, stuffed penguin, Emily silently thanked Maria for giving her the chance to write her own story. She just prayed it wouldn't all fall apart when the truth inevitably came to light. "It's not much," Jack said as he led Emily into the small house, "but it's warm." Sarah darted ahead of them, Mr. Waddles tucked under one arm as she flipped on lights. The home's modest interior came into view, a worn but clean sofa, family. Photos lining the walls, a small TV that had seen better days. To Emily, it felt more inviting than any of the Stanford mansions ever had. "You should take a hot shower," Jack suggested, noticing how she shivered. "Sarah, honey, can you get our guests some dry clothes?" Sarah nodded eagerly and disappeared down the hallway. Left alone, Jack and Emily stood in awkward silence, the storm rattling the windows. "I really can't thank you enough," Emily said, trying to stop her teeth from chattering. "I thought, well, I wasn't sure anyone would come along." Jack's expression grew serious. "No one should be left out in weather like this." He gestured to a collection of framed photos on a nearby shelf. "My late wife, Lisa, she always said helping others wasn't optional. It's just what you do." Emily moved closer to the photos, drawn to one showing a younger Jack with a beautiful dark-haired woman. They were laughing, their arms around each other, love radiating from the image. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "How long ago?" 3 years. Jack's voice was soft. "Cancer, Sarah was 5. Before Emily could respond, Sarah bounded back into the room, arms full of clothing. "These should fit," she announced proudly. "They're my teachers. She left them here when she helped with the school fundraiser." Jack ran a hand through his hair, looking embarrassed. "Miss Roberts helps with Sarah's after-school care sometimes. The bathroom's down the hall, first door on the left." The hot water was heaven against Emily's frozen skin. She tried not to think about her Mercedes, probably buried in snow by now, or the Louis Vuitton suitcase in its trunk. The clothes Sarah had brought were simple, yoga pants and a warm sweater, but they felt more honest than anything in her designer wardrobe. When she emerged, the smell of cooking filled the house. She followed it to find Jack at the stove, while Sarah set the table, carefully placing Mr. Waddles in his own chair. "Grilled cheese and tomato soup," Jack explained. "Storm food." My favorite, Sarah added, then looked at Emily hopefully. Do you want to sit next to Mr. Waddles? He's a very good dinner companion. Emily felt something in her chest tighten. When was the last time anyone had offered her something so simple, so genuine? I would love to. Over dinner, Sarah chatted about school, her stuffed penguin, and her dad's garage. Emily found herself relaxing, drawn into their easy warmth. Jack watched them interact, something unreadable in his expression. So, Jane, he said during a lull in the conversation, what brings you out in weather like this? Emily's hand tightened on her spoon. She'd prepared for this question, but facing Jack's honest gaze made lying harder. I'm starting over. New job opportunity. The half-truth felt bitter on her tongue. In Milbrook? Jack looked surprised. Near here. I got a bit turned around in the storm. Sarah perked up. Are you staying? Dad, she could come to my school. Play! I'm going to be a penguin just like Mr. Waddles. Sarah, Jack's tone held gentle warning, but Emily jumped in. I'd love to see your play, she said, meaning it. When is it? Next week. And Dad built the whole set, even though he was super busy at the garage and... Speaking of busy, Jack interrupted. It's getting late, sweetheart. Time to get ready for bed. Sarah's face fell, but she gathered Mr. Waddles and stood. Before leaving, she threw her arms around Emily in a surprise hug. I'm glad Daddy found you, she whispered. After Sarah left, Jack began clearing the table. Emily stood to help, their hands brushing as they both reached for the same plate. The contact sent an unexpected warmth through her. You're good with her, Jack said quietly. Most people don't know how to talk to kids who've lost a parent. Emily thought of her own mother, more ghost than parent in her later years. Sometimes the hardest losses are the ones that happen while people are still here. Jack looked at her sharply, as if seeing something new. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken understanding. Then a particularly strong gust rattled the windows, breaking the spell. The storm's getting worse, Jack said, moving to peer outside. Roads will be impassable soon. He turned back to her, his expression conflicted. Look, I know this is awkward, but you should stay here tonight. We have a spare room. Emily thought of her frozen car, of the long night ahead. She thought of Sarah's hug and Jack's kind eyes. She thought of all the lies between them, and all the truths she wished she could tell. Thank you, she said finally. I'd like that. Later, lying in the small guest room, Emily studied the family photos on the walls. They told a story so different from the formal portraits that hung in her family's homes. These showed real moments, real love. Jack teaching Sarah to ride a bike, Lisa holding a newborn Sarah, all three of them at what looked like a county fair. In the quiet dark, Emily allowed herself to imagine belonging to a story like that. But as she drifted off to sleep, her father's voice echoed in her head, Stanfords don't run from their responsibilities. The storm raged on outside, but the bigger tempest was brewing in her heart. Morning brought a world transformed by snow. Emily woke to the sound of laughter and the smell of coffee. For a moment she forgot where she was, the small room so different from her palatial suite at the Stanford estate. Reality crashed back when she found the business card in her coat pocket. Emily Stanford, Vice President of Corporate Relations, Stanford Industries. She quickly tucked it away, her fingers burning as if the card might brand her a liar. In the kitchen, Sarah was describing her dream to Mr. Waddles while Jack made pancakes. They both looked up when Emily entered. The roads are still pretty bad, Jack said, sliding a cup of coffee her way. I need to open the garage, though. People will need help with their cars after this storm. Could I... Emily hesitated. Could I maybe help to repay you for taking me in? Jack's surprise was evident. You know anything about cars? I'm a quick learner. She didn't mention that she'd spent countless childhood hours watching the Stanford Industries mechanics work on her father's vintage car collection. And that's how Emily Stanford, heir to billions, found herself holding a flashlight over a frozen engine while Jack worked below. His garage was nothing like the gleaming workshop she knew, but there was something honest about its worn tools. and oil-stained floors. "Socket wrench," Jack called from under the car. Emily handed it to him, proud she'd remembered which one it was from his earlier explanation. "You're a natural," he said, emerging with a smile that made her heart skip. Throughout the morning, customers trickled in, their cars victims of the storm. Emily watched Jack with each one, how he listened patiently to their concerns, explained repairs in simple terms, often charging less than his posted rates. "Times are tough," he told one elderly woman who fretted about her bill. "We'll work something out, Mrs. Chen." During a quiet moment, Emily spotted the pile of unpaid bills in his office. Her throat tightened. She could solve all his financial problems with one phone call. Instead, she organized his filing system, pretending not to notice the past due stamps. "Dad!" Sarah burst in after school, Mr. Waddles dusted with snow. "Can Jane stay for dinner again, please?" Emily looked to Jack, who shrugged. "You're welcome to stay, though fair warning, it's spaghetti night." "I make the sauce," Sarah announced proudly, with help from Mr. Waddles. That evening, Emily learned how to make sauce from a box taste homemade. "The secret is extra garlic," Sarah confided. As they ate, she told them sanitized versions of her travels, each lie adding to the weight in her chest. "Must be nice," Jack said, "being free to go wherever you want." If he only knew the gilded cage she'd fled from. "Freedom's complicated," she replied. Later, helping with dishes, Jack asked, "How long are you planning to stay in town?" Emily focused on drying a plate. "I'm not sure. I should probably look for a place soon." "You could stay here," Sarah piped up from her homework spot. "We have the spare room, and Mr. Waddles likes you." "Sarah," Jack warned, but Emily saw the question in his eyes. A sharp knock at the door saved her from answering. Jack opened it to find a man in an expensive suit looking out of place in their small-town setting. Emily's heart stopped. She recognized him, one of her father's security team. "Evening," the man said smoothly. "I'm looking for someone who might have passed through during the storm. A woman driving a silver Mercedes." Emily retreated to the kitchen, hands shaking as she pretended to wash dishes. Through the pounding in her ears, she heard Jack's response. "Lot of cars got stranded in that storm. Have you checked the impound lot?" The man left, but Emily's peace was shattered. That night she lay awake in the spare room, the business card burning a hole in her coat pocket. On the wall, a family photo seemed to watch her. Jack, Sarah, and Lisa at a picnic, their happiness untainted by lies. "I'm sorry," she whispered to their smiling faces. "I'm so sorry." In her dreams, she was back in her father's study. But this time when he looked up, he wore Jack's face, filled with disappointment at her deception. The Milbrook Winter Festival transformed the town square into a wonderland of twinkling lights and frost-covered decorations. Sarah skipped ahead of Jack and Emily, Mr. Waddles secure in her backpack, his head poking out to see the sights. "Look!" Sarah pointed to a booth selling hot chocolate. "Can we get some, please?" Jack checked his wallet discreetly, but Emily was already moving toward the stand. "My treat," she said, "to thank you both for everything." She ordered 3 hot chocolates, remembering to ask for extra marshmallows the way Sarah liked. 2 weeks had passed since the storm, and she'd fallen into an easy rhythm with them. Mornings at the garage, afternoons helping Sarah with homework, evenings filled with simple dinners and board games. "Here," Sarah thrust a paper into Emily's hands. It was a drawing of 3 figures and a penguin standing in front of what looked like Jack's house. "My family" was written across the top in careful letters. Emily's heart clenched. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." "That's you," Sarah pointed to the tallest female figure, "next to Daddy, and that's me and Mr. Waddles." Jack peered over Emily's shoulder at the drawing, his presence warm in the cold air. "Quite the artist we've got here," he said softly. They wandered through the festival, trying samples of local honey and watching ice sculpture demonstrations. At the ring toss booth, Sarah set her sights on a stuffed seal. "It could be Mr. Waddles' friend," she explained seriously. Jack stepped up to try, but after 3 failed attempts, Emily gently took the rings. Years of mandatory tennis lessons. finally proved useful as she landed a perfect throw. "Where'd you learn to throw like that?" Jack asked as Sarah hugged her new seal. Emily's smile faltered. "Oh, just picked it up somewhere." They passed a dance floor where couples swayed to an old love song. Jack hesitated, then held out his hand. "Would you like to—" "Yes," Emily said too quickly. His arms felt right around her, strong and secure. They moved slowly, snow falling softly around them. Sarah watched from a nearby bench, arranging Mr. Waddles and the seal in a dance pose of their own. "This is nice," Jack murmured. "Having you here, with us." Emily looked up at him, snow catching in his dark hair. It would be so easy to rise, on her tiptoes, to close the distance between them. Instead, she laid her head on his shoulder, hiding the tears that threatened. Later, they found a booth, selling hand-carved wooden ornaments. Sarah gasped at a small penguin, perfectly detailed. "It looks just like Mr. Waddles," she exclaimed. The craftsman smiled. "That's $30, little lady." Jack's face fell slightly, but before he could speak, Sarah shook her head. "That's okay. We're saving for new tires, right, Daddy?" Emily watched Jack's expression, pride and pain mixed together. She wanted desperately to buy the ornament, but she'd learned that his pride was as much a part of him as his kindness. Instead, she knelt beside Sarah. "You know what? I bet we could make our own ornaments. We could get some clay tomorrow, and you could teach Mr. Waddles how to sculpt." Sarah's face lit up. "Really? Can we make one for Daddy, too?" "Of course. And maybe one for your mom?" Sarah nodded solemnly. She'd like that. Walking home through the snowy streets, Sarah between them holding both their hands, Emily felt a contentment she'd never known in her privileged life. Sarah swung their joined hands, chattering about clay penguins and ice sculptures. At home, after Sarah was in bed, Emily and Jack sat on the porch swing, sharing a blanket against the cold. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for today, for everything these past weeks. Jack, I'm the one who should be thanking you. You've given me—" She trailed off, unable to find words for what they'd given her. A glimpse of real life, real love. He turned to face her, his expression serious. "Jane, I know this might be too fast, but I feel like maybe this isn't just chance. You finding us in that storm." Her heart soared and plummeted simultaneously. He was going to kiss her, and she wanted it more than anything, but he was going to kiss Jane Smith, not Emily Stanford. The porch light caught something moving in his jacket pocket. Sarah's drawing, carefully folded. "My family," in a child's hopeful handwriting. Emily stood abruptly. "I should get some sleep. Early day tomorrow." She fled inside, leaving Jack alone on the swing. In her room, she pulled out her phone, dead for weeks now. By choice. If she charged it, she knew what she'd find. Dozens of missed calls from her father, from the family lawyers, from her arranged fiancé. She took out Sarah's drawing again, tracing the happy figures with trembling fingers. A family built on lies couldn't last. But God, how she wished it could. The newspaper landed on the garage's front counter with a damning thud. On the front page, beneath the headline, "Stanford Heiress Still Missing," was a photo of Emily in an elegant evening gown at a charity gala. Mrs. Chen, their elderly customer, from the week before, stood with her arms crossed. "I knew she looked familiar," she said. "My granddaughter follows all these society people. That's Emily Stanford, not Jane Smith." Jack stared at the photo, his face unreadable. Emily, working on an invoice nearby, felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "There must be some mistake," he said, but his voice held a question. Mrs. Chen jabbed a finger at the article. "Stanford Industries, billions of dollars, and she's been playing house in our little town?" Emily stood, her legs shaking. "Jack, I can explain. Can you—" He turned to her, and the hurt in his eyes was worse than anger would have been. "Was any of it real?" "All of it," she whispered. "Everything except my name." Mrs. Chen was already on her phone. Within minutes, it seemed the whole town was buzzing with the news. Emily Stanford, the missing heiress, had been found in their humble community, masquerading as a normal person. Why? Jack asked when they were alone in his office. Was this some kind of game? Rich girl playing at being poor? No! Emily fought back tears. I was running from an arranged marriage, from a life where nothing I wanted mattered, and then I found you and Sarah, and for the first time I felt... What? Pity for the struggling single dad. Thought you'd have some fun pretending to be one of us common folk. That's not fair. But wasn't it? Hadn't she deceived them every day? The door chimed and Sarah burst in from school. Mr. Waddles clutched tight. She stopped short, sensing the tension. Daddy, Jane, what's wrong? Emily's heart broke at the confusion in Sarah's voice. How could she explain to an 8-year-old that their whole relationship had been built on a lie? Jack knelt beside his daughter. Sarah, honey, Jane she's not who we thought she was. Sarah looked at Emily, clutching Mr. Waddles tighter. I don't understand. Before Emily could respond, the garage's door chimed again. A man in an expensive suit entered, the same security officer who'd come asking questions weeks ago. Behind him came 2 more men, and then Emily's father. Richard Stanford filled the small office with his presence, his tailored suit and commanding air absurdly out of place among the tools and oil stains. Emily, he said, his voice carrying years of authority, this ridiculous adventure is over. She straightened her spine, finding strength in Jack's garage coveralls she still wore. I'm not coming back. Don't be childish. The merger is pending, the Hamilton family is waiting, and you're here playing mechanic. Sarah edged closer to Jack. Daddy? Richard noticed her for the first time. I see. Is this what drew you here? Playing mother to someone else's child? Don't, Emily warned, but the damage was done. I've already contacted the local press, Richard continued. We'll spin this as a charitable endeavor. Wealthy heiress helps struggling single father, very touching. The publicity will actually help the merger. Help the merger? Jack's voice was quiet but intense. Is that all this is to you? A publicity? A stunt? Emily watched her 2 worlds collide, the genuine love she'd found here crashing against the gilded prison of her past. Sarah's drawing of their family still hung on the office wall, mocking them all. Emily Stanford? Sarah's small voice cut through the tension. Like on TV? Emily knelt before her, even as her father made a disapproving sound. Sarah, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I should have told you the truth. But we were going to make clay penguins. You promised. The simple betrayal in those words cut deeper than any anger. Behind Sarah, Jack's face showed the same raw hurt. The car is waiting, Richard announced. Emily, it's time to return to your real life. This is my real life. But even as she said it, she knew how false it sounded. Jane Smith might have belonged here, but Emily Stanford. Through the garage windows she could see reporters gathering. Soon this small sanctuary would be overrun with cameras and questions. She'd wanted freedom from her father's world, but instead she'd brought that world crashing into Jack and Sarah's peaceful life. I'm sorry, she whispered again, backing toward the door. I'm so sorry. She fled into the waiting car, her father's satisfied smile more painful than any rebuke. As they pulled away, she caught one last glimpse through the window. Sarah crying into Mr. Waddles, Jack holding her close, their small family broken by her lies. The newspaper lay abandoned on the counter, her other self staring up from the society page, a stranger in a world she no longer wanted but couldn't escape. The next morning, Milbrook looked like a movie set. News vans clogged Main Street. Reporters clutching microphones prowled the sidewalks, and paparazzi with long lenses camped outside Morrison Auto Repair. Jack pulled the garage's blinds shut, but camera flashes still leaked through. Is this really necessary? He muttered, glancing at a photographer perched in the tree outside. Daddy? Sarah's voice trembled. Why are they taking pictures of our house too? He'd kept her home from school after photographers had swarmed the bus stop. Now she sat in the office corner, Mr. Waddles pressed close, watching their world unravel through gaps in the blinds. Channel 7 News reporting live from Milbrook, Vermont. A reporter's voice carried through the walls. Where Emily Stanford, heiress to the Stanford Industries fortune, spent 3 weeks living with local mechanic Jack Morrison and his daughter. The phone rang again, the 20th call that morning. Jack let it go to voicemail. "Mr. Morrison," the message played out loud. "People magazine here. We'd love to get your side of the story. Our readers are fascinated by this real-life fairy tale." "Fairy tale," Jack scoffed, deleting the message. Sarah pulled out her drawing of their family, now crumpled from being clutched too tight. Was it all pretend, like make-believe? Before Jack could answer, a knock at the back door made them both jump. It was Tom from the hardware store, looking apologetic. "Brought you some groceries," he said, handing over a bag. "Figured you might not want to brave the circus out there." "Thanks, Tom." Jack's voice was rough. "How bad is it?" "Well, the Daily Mail's offering $5,000 for photos of you two together, and there's reporters asking everyone in town about your romance." He hesitated. "Listen, Jack, some folks are talking about how this could be good for business. You know, publicity and all." "I'm not selling our story," Jack cut him off. "Sarah's been through enough." After Tom left, Jack found Sarah attempting to hide Mr. Waddles under a blanket. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" "Protecting him," she said seriously, "so the cameras can't take his picture without asking." Jack's heart broke a little more. He gathered her close, penguin and all. "How about we watch a movie? Just us?" But even their attempt at normalcy was interrupted by the constant click of cameras outside. On TV, every channel seemed to be running. The story: Stanford Industries heir apparent found living as a mechanic's assistant. Sources say the relationship between Emily Stanford and local single father Jack Morrison. But David Hamilton, Emily's rumored fiancé, declined to comment. Sarah fell asleep on the couch, Mr. Waddles tucked under her chin. Jack covered them with a blanket, then made the mistake of checking his phone. Dozens of messages from reporters, friend requests from strangers, and one text from an unknown number. "I never meant for this to happen. E." He deleted it without responding. A knock at the front door made him tense, but it was just Mrs. Chen again, looking ashamed. "I'm sorry, Jack," she said quietly. "I didn't think. I just recognized her from my granddaughter's magazines. I never meant to cause all this." Jack nodded, too tired for anger. "I know. She seemed happy here," Mrs. Chen added. "Really happy. Not like those society pictures." On his coffee table, a magazine someone had shoved through the mail slot showed 2 images side by side: Emily Stanford in designer clothes at a gala, and Jane Smith in his garage coveralls, laughing as she helped Sarah with homework. The contrast was striking. The article's headline read, "Stanford Heiress finds love in small-town garage." But was it real? Jack stared at the second photo, remembering that moment. Sarah had been struggling with fractions, and Emily, Jane, had used spare parts to demonstrate division. Her smile had been so genuine, her patience so natural. Was any of it real? He whispered to the empty room. Sarah stirred on the couch. "Daddy? Is Jane... Emily, is she coming back?" "I don't know, baby. Mr. Waddles misses her," Sarah said, hugging her penguin. "And his new seal friend doesn't have a name yet. She was supposed to help us pick one." Outside, another camera flashed. Jack pulled his daughter closer, wondering how long it would take for the media circus to move on, for their quiet life to return. But even when the reporters left, how could things go back to normal? The empty chair at their dinner table, the ghost of Emily's laughter in the garage, the memory of almost kisses and could-have-beens, those would linger long after the last camera disappeared. Emily sat at her father's mahogany desk, staring at the Stanford family ring on her finger, a heavy gold piece with the family crest that felt more like a shackle than jewelry. She'd found it waiting on her pillow the morning after her return, along with a note from her father. "Remember who you are. The Hamilton merger meeting is in an hour," Richard Stanford announced, striding into the office. "David is expecting you to lunch with his family afterward. Emily touched the ring. "And if I refuse," her father's expression hardened, "then I'll be forced to take action regarding your recent associates." "What does that mean?" "It means that garage of his operates on thin margins. One health inspection, one tax audit." He let the threat hang in the air. Emily's blood ran cold. "You wouldn't. I'm protecting you from your own poor judgment." He softened slightly. "Emily, that man and his daughter, they're not our kind. You must see that." "Our kind?" Emily stood. "You mean the kind that threatens innocent people, that arranges marriages like business deals? I mean people who understand responsibility." He gestured to the wall of Stanford family portraits. "Everything we have was built by generations who put duty first. And were they happy?" Richard's silence was answer enough. A knock interrupted them. Emily's mother entered, elegant as always in designer clothes that couldn't quite hide her exhaustion. "The reporters are still outside," she said, "and the Hamiltons' lunch has been scheduled for weeks," Richard finished. "Emily will attend." Emily looked at her mother, hoping for support, but found only resigned acceptance. How many times had she seen that same expression in the mirror lately? "I need some air," Emily muttered, fleeing the office. In her suite, she found her phone buried under society invitations. There were dozens of missed calls, but only one. Message mattered. A photo Sarah had sent weeks ago of Mr. Waddles helping at the garage. A new text appeared from an unknown number. "They're hurting Emily. Fix this." It was from Maria, the only person who knew the whole truth. Emily's fingers hovered over the keys, aching to respond, to explain. Instead, she watched another message pop up, this one from David Hamilton himself. "My father's lawyers have drafted a prenup. Looking forward to lunch." She threw the phone across the room. Across town, Jack faced his own pressure. The bank manager sat across his desk, looking uncomfortable. "Look, Jack, with all this publicity, certain opportunities have arisen. Several investors are interested in the garage. I'm not selling. They're offering well above market value. And with your current mortgage..." Jack's jaw tightened. "I said no," the manager sighed. "At least consider it. Times are changing. Small independent shops like yours. Well, Stanford Industries is opening a chain of service centers in the region." It was a deliberate hit. Jack stood. "We're done here." After the manager left, Jack found Sarah in their usual homework spot, but instead of studying, she was writing a letter. "What's that, sweetheart?" "It's for Emily," Sarah said, not looking up. "I'm telling Mr. Waddles' SEAL friend that we named him Hope, because that's what you said Mom always told us to have." Jack's throat tightened. The seal sat beside Mr. Waddles, its tag still bearing the festival's price sticker, a reminder of Emily's thoughtfulness and his own pride. "Can we send it to her?" Sarah asked. Before Jack could answer, his phone buzzed. Another text from his landlord. "Got an offer for the building, triple the current rent. Need your decision by Friday." He deleted it, adding it to the growing list of problems he couldn't share with Sarah. His daughter had lost enough mother figures. He wouldn't burden her with adult worries, too. That night, after Sarah was asleep, Jack found himself looking at the photo of Emily in his garage. She'd been so natural with tools, with Sarah, with him. The ghostly click of cameras outside reminded him it had all been a lie. Or had it? The Emily he knew, who taught Sarah fractions with spare parts, who organized his filing system, who looked at him like he was something precious. She couldn't have been entirely fake. But it didn't matter now. The Stanford ring on her finger marked her as clearly as the grease stains on his hands marked him. Their worlds weren't meant to merge. In her bedroom, Sarah hugged Mr. Waddles and Hope close, whispering, "Maybe if we wish hard enough, she'll come back." The wishes floated into the night, but the Stanford ring remained firmly on Emily's finger, and the pressure from both worlds continued to mount. Emily's journal lay open on her marble vanity, its pages filled with memories of a simpler life. She'd started writing in it the day after returning home, trying to hold on to pieces of happiness that seemed to slip further away with each passing day. "The Hamilton engagement gala is in an hour," her mother called through the door. "The stylists are waiting." Emily stared at her reflection, barely recognizing herself beneath the perfect makeup and elaborate updo. Her Stanford ring caught the light, but all she could think about was the weight of a wrench in her hand, the satisfaction of fixing something real. "Coming!" she called, but first she wrote one more line. "I never knew how empty fullness could feel until I experienced the richness of having nothing." The gala transformed the Stanford Mansion's ballroom into a winter wonderland. Ice sculptures, crystal decorations, and white roses everywhere. It was beautiful in a cold, untouchable way, so different from the warm chaos of the Milbrook. "Winter Festival. Emily, darling." David Hamilton approached, champagne flutes in hand. He was handsome in an obvious way, like everything else in her world. "You've been missed in society." She accepted the champagne but didn't drink. "Have I? Or has the merger been missed? Can't it be both?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Our union will create the largest corporate empire on the East Coast. Union, not marriage, not love." She thought of Jack's gentle hands showing her how to change oil, his patient voice explaining engines. Real things, honest things. Across the ballroom she caught her mother watching, gin glass trembling slightly. Behind her, Richard Stanford worked the room, his network of power and influence spreading like frost. Emily's phone buzzed. A message. From Maria. Sarah's letter came today. She named the seal Hope. The champagne flute nearly slipped from her fingers. Meanwhile, in Milbrook, Jack sat in his quiet kitchen, staring at bills spread across the table. The landlord's final notice. "Lay on top. Rent tripled, due next week." Beside it, a letter from Stanford Industries announcing their new service center opening nearby, offering competitive rates that smaller shops won't be able to match. "Daddy?" Sarah stood in the doorway, clutching Mr. Waddles and Hope. "Can you read us a story?" Us. She still set a place for Emily at dinner sometimes. "Sure, sweetheart." He gathered the bills into a pile. "Which one tonight?" "The one about the princess who gives up her crown for love." Jack's heart clenched. "How about something else?" In her room, Sarah had created a photo wall. Drawings of their family, snapshots from the Winter Festival, even a magazine clipping of Emily at some charity event. She'd drawn a heart around it in red crayon. "Mr. Waddles says Emily's sad," Sarah announced as Jack tucked her in. Like Mommy was sad before she got sick. The comparison hit him hard. Lisa had tried so hard to hide her depression from Sarah, just as she'd tried to hide the cancer later. Both secrets had come out eventually. Both had changed their lives. Forever. "Sometimes," he said carefully, "grown-ups have to make hard choices. But you always say love is the most important thing." "It is, baby. But sometimes, love isn't enough." After Sarah fell asleep, Jack found himself in the garage, surrounded by the tools Emily had organized, the filing system she'd created, the coffee mug she'd left behind. A post-it note in her handwriting still clung to the computer monitor. "Don't forget Mrs. Chen's oil change. Tuesday." His phone lit up with a text from Tom. Stanford Industries bought the hardware store, offering jobs to all employees at their new center. "Want me to put in a word?" Jack turned off the phone. Back at the gala, Emily excused herself from another conversation about wedding venues. In a quiet hallway, she found herself face to face with a massive portrait of her grandmother, Eleanor Stanford. "The measure of wealth isn't in what you have," Emily whispered her grandmother's words, "but in what you give." She touched her Stanford ring, thinking of Sarah's letter about Hope the seal, about Jack's quiet strength, about a love that asked nothing but truth. "Emily?" Her father's voice carried down the hall. "The Hamiltons are waiting." She looked up at her grandmother's portrait, seeing understanding in those painted eyes. Eleanor had married for duty, lived for obligation, died with regrets. Emily twisted the ring on her finger, feeling the weight of generations of choices made for duty rather than love. In Milbrook, Sarah slept with Hope and Mr. Waddles held tight, while Jack stared at his mounting bills and wondered how much longer he could hold on to his dream of independence. Neither knew that Emily stood in a mansion full of everything, feeling poorer than she'd ever felt in their humble home. The contract papers landed on Jack's desk with the weight of an ultimatum. Stanford Industries' lawyer, a sharp-featured woman in a $1,000 suit, stood waiting for his response. "It's a generous offer," she said. 3 times market value, plus a guaranteed management position at our new service center. Jack stared at the Stanford Industries logo embossed on the cover page. "And if I refuse?" "Mr. Morrison, let's be practical. Our new center will have state-of-the-art equipment, corporate backing, and prices you can't match. This offer lets you be part of progress rather than a victim of it." Through his office window, Jack could see Main Street changing. The hardware store's sign now bore the Stanford logo. 3 other local businesses had sold in the past week. Even Tom had taken a job at the new center. "I need time to think about it." "You have until Friday." She placed her card on top of the contract. "Mr. Stanford wants this resolved before the merger announcement." After she left, Jack found Sarah in her usual spot, but instead of homework, she was counting the money in her piggy bank. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" "Counting my savings," she said, Mr. Waddles and Hope supervising the pile of coins. "For the garage." Jack's throat tightened. "The garage. I heard Mrs. Chen talking. She said we might lose it." Sarah looked up, her eyes too serious for an 8-year-old. "I have $27.35. Will that help?" He gathered her close, piggy bank and all. "You don't need to worry about that." But later, alone in his office, he studied the contract again. The numbers were tempting. Enough to pay off his debts, start fresh, maybe even put some away for Sarah's college. But his father had built this garage from nothing. He'd promised Lisa he'd keep it going, give Sarah something real to inherit. Across town, Emily sat in another corporate office, listening to her father detail the expansion plans. "With the Morrison property, we'll control the entire service sector in 3 counties, Richard said proudly. "The Hamilton merger can proceed without any local complications." Emily's hands clenched beneath the conference table. "And the other businesses. The whole town's being swallowed up. Progress requires change. Speaking of which, David's family expects a formal engagement announcement next week." She thought of the contract in her bag, documents she'd spent weeks preparing in secret, using skills learned managing her grandmother's trust. "I need to review some merger documents," she said carefully. "In the private office?" Richard beamed. "Finally taking an interest in the family business. Use my office. The files are all there." But once alone in her father's sanctuary, Emily pulled out her own papers. Her hands shook as she accessed the private server, using passwords gleaned from years of watching her father work. "The measure of wealth is in what you give." She whispered her grandmother's words like a prayer. Within an hour, she'd done it. No, transferred a significant portion of her personal inheritance into a blind trust. By Friday, Jack would receive an anonymous offer to buy the building his garage occupied, with a 99-year lease option at the current rate. She couldn't save the whole town, but she could save this one piece of it, save something real. Her phone buzzed, a message from David Hamilton. "Engagement ring selected, announcement on track." Another buzz, a photo from Maria showing Sarah's letter covered in drawings of penguins, seals, and hearts. Emily touched her Stanford ring, feeling its weight. The door opened, and she quickly hid her documents. "Everything okay?" her father asked. "Just reviewing the Morrison contract." Richard smiled. "Good. That garage has been a thorn in our side long enough." That night, Jack sat at his kitchen table, the Stanford contract before him. Sarah's piggy bank sat nearby, her small sacrifice making his own choice harder. His phone lit up with a text from his landlord. "Got another offer for the building. Better terms. Call me." Looking at Sarah's school picture on the wall, Jack thought about legacy, about teaching her to stand up for what matters. But he also thought about security, about giving her opportunities he'd never had. "What would you do, Lisa?" he whispered, to the quiet kitchen. In her mansion across town, Emily held Sarah's letter, reading it again by moonlight. The little girl's words were full of hope and love, real things in a world of corporate maneuvers and social obligations. Two paths lay before her, marked by two different rings. The Stanford crest that represented duty, and a simple ring she'd seen in a small jeweler's window, bought with her last bit of private savings before returning home. One path led to corporate empires and loveless mergers. The other remained to be seen. Jack's father's watch stopped at exactly 9:47 a.m., just as the Stanford Industries bulldozers began demolishing the hardware store across the street. The ancient timepiece had survived 30 years of garage work, but a single fumble, his hands, shaking as he watched Tom's former workplace crumble, had shattered its face. "Progress requires change," the Stanford lawyer had said. Now Jack watched that progress tear through his community like a winter storm. Sarah stood beside him, clutching Mr. Waddles and hope. "Why are they breaking things, Daddy?" Before he could answer, his phone rang. The landlord again. "Jack, you need to decide. Stanford Industries just doubled their offer." Through the garage window, he could see reporters gathering to film the demolition. One spotted him and raised her camera. "Sarah, go inside, honey." But she stood her ground, a child's defiance in the face of adult chaos. Is this why Emily left? Because her daddy breaks things? The question hit him like a physical blow. Meanwhile, across town, Emily faced her own breaking point. She stood in her father's study, staring at the engagement announcement draft on his desk. The words blurred before her eyes. Stanford Industries proudly announces the merger of business and family. As Emily Stanford, heir to the Stanford fortune, joins hands with David Hamilton. Her grandmother's photograph watched from the wall, while the morning news droned from her father's TV. Breaking news from Milbrook, Vermont, where Stanford Industries' renovation project continues. Local resistance centers around Morrison. Auto repair, where owner Jack Morrison refuses to sell despite mounting pressure. The TV showed Jack outside his garage, Sarah beside him watching the demolition across the street. The camera zoomed in on Sarah's face, on the stuffed animals she clutched like shields. Something inside Emily shattered. She reached for her phone, dialing a number she'd memorized but never dared call. "Maria, it's time. Send the papers." Her father chose that moment to enter. "Emily, the press conference is in an hour. The Hamiltons are expecting—" "No." The word hung between them, small but unshakable. "What did you say?" Emily straightened, feeling the strength of her grandmother's presence. "I said no. To all of it, the merger, the marriage, the destruction of people's lives. Don't be dramatic. This is business. This is wrong." She gestured to the TV where the hardware store's sign crashed to the ground. "That town, those people, they have something real. Something we lost generations ago." Richard's face hardened. "I've humored your rebellion long enough. You are a Stanford. Act like one." "That's exactly what I'm doing." Emily pulled out the trust documents she'd prepared. "Grandmother taught me that true wealth isn't about what you take, but what you give." "What are you talking about?" "I've transferred my personal inheritance into a trust. The paperwork is already filed. You can't touch it, can't use it for leverage, can't use it to hurt them anymore." Her father's face went white. "You can't do this." "I already have." The study door burst open. David Hamilton stormed in, waving his phone. "Richard, the merger documents. There's a problem with the financing." Emily smiled, a weight lifting from her shoulders. That would be the Stanford heir's portion, being legally unavailable. "You're choosing that mechanic over your family?" Richard's voice shook. "I'm choosing love over fear, truth over pretense." Emily removed the Stanford ring, placing it on her father's desk. "I'm choosing to be my grandmother's granddaughter rather than your corporate pawn." Back in Milbrook, Jack stared at his broken watch, the last gift his father had given him. Through the window, he could see more Stanford Industries trucks arriving. Sarah tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, Hope says we shouldn't give up." He looked at his daughter, at the wise soul shining through her eyes, then at the contract still sitting on his desk, offering security at the cost of everything he believed in. With sudden clarity, he picked up the phone. "Mr. Morrison?" the lawyer answered smoothly. "Have you made your decision?" Jack watched another piece of his childhood town fall to the bulldozers. But in his mind he saw Lisa's smile, heard her voice. "Some things are worth fighting for." "Yes," he said, "I have." The broken watch face caught the morning light. Its hands frozen at the moment everything changed. The old bank statement lay crumpled in Maria's weathered hands as she sat across from Jack in his office. Outside, the demolition had temporarily halted. Emily's trust maneuver had thrown enough legal wrenches into the works to buy them time. "She asked me not to show anyone," Maria said, smoothing the paper. "But you need to know the truth about Emily Stanford." Jack started to protest, but Maria pressed on. "Look at these transactions, every month for the past 5 years. His eyes scanned the document. Anonymous donations to children's hospitals, funding for small business grants, scholarships for single parents, all traced back to a private account Emily had maintained separately from her family's wealth. "She used her grandmother's inheritance," Maria explained. "The only money she considered truly hers. Richard Stanford never knew." She pulled out more papers. Thank you letters, project reports, photographs. Emily at a cancer ward opening. Her name deliberately omitted from the press coverage. Emily in work clothes helping rebuild a community center. Face turned away from cameras. "The night of the storm," Maria continued, "she wasn't just running away. She was coming to check on one of her projects, the children's reading program at your local library, the one that helps kids like Sarah." Jack's throat tightened. He remembered Sarah coming home excited about new books, about the mysterious donor who'd saved the program when budget cuts threatened it. But why hide it? Because real giving isn't about recognition. Maria's voice softened. Her grandmother taught her that. Eleanor Stanford was the same way, helped people quietly, without the family's knowledge. She reached into her bag, producing one final document, Emily's personal journal. "She asked me to give you this, said you deserved to know everything." Jack opened it with trembling hands, recognizing Emily's neat handwriting. "Day 1 in Milbrook. I came to check on the reading program, but fate had other plans. A storm, a rescue, a little girl with a stuffed penguin who reminded me why I started all this, because every child deserves a chance at happiness, at security, at love." He read on, seeing their time together through her eyes. Her joy in simple moments, her growing love for Sarah, her struggle with the lie even as the truth of her feelings deepened. Day 15. Jack taught me about transmissions today. He has such gentle hands for a mechanic, such patience. Sarah made us all laugh trying to explain engines to Mr. Waddles. This is what wealth really means. Moments like these, real connections. Honest work. How can I tell them the truth now? How can I risk losing this? A noise made him look up. Sarah stood in the doorway, Hope and Mr. Waddles in her arms. "Is that Emily's?" she asked, pointing to the journal. Jack nodded. "Read some. More, please." He pulled her into his lap, while Maria watched with knowing eyes. Day 20. Sarah asked me to help with her school project. A presentation about heroes. She talked about her mom, about Jack, about all the quiet ways people help others. If she only knew about the reading program, about all the other children I try to help. But maybe that's what love is. Doing good without needing credit, just like Jack does every day in this garage. Sarah hugged her stuffed animals closer. She was helping people, like Daddy helps with cars. "Yes, sweetheart," Maria smiled. She learned it from her grandmother, that true wealth is measured in kindness, not dollars. Jack thought about Emily in his garage, always ready to help customers, never complaining about the long hours or dirty work. He'd thought she was playing at being normal, but maybe she'd been showing her true self all along. "There's more," Maria said quietly, pulling out a final paper. "The trust she created? It's not just about stopping the merger. She's established a community foundation for Milbrook. The garage, the library, the school. They're all protected now. She used everything she had to save what matters." Through his office window, Jack could see the Stanford Industries trucks pulling away. The demolition had been halted, at least for now. And in his hands, he held the truth about the woman who'd sacrificed everything to protect not just him and Sarah, but an entire community's way of life. "She loved us that much?" Sarah whispered. "Yes," Maria answered, "enough to give up everything she had to protect what you have." Jack closed the journal, his heart full of new understanding and old regret. "We have to find her." "Read the last entry," Maria suggested. He turned to the final page, dated that morning. "Some people are born to wealth, but the luckiest are born to love. I choose love. I choose truth. I choose the chance to be worthy of a little girl's trust and a good man's heart. The only question is, will they choose to understand?" The town petition started with Mrs. Chen. She placed it on the counter of her restaurant, right next to a framed photograph of the children's ward at Milbrook General, the one Emily had secretly funded. "For Emily Stanford," the petition read, "who saw the heart of our town and chose to protect it." By noon, there were hundreds of signatures. The hardware store workers, the library staff, parents whose children had received anonymous scholarships, customers whose cars Emily had helped repair. Jack stared at the growing list of names, each one a testament to the real person behind the Stanford fortune. "Channel 7 wants to interview you," Tom said, pointing to the news van outside. "They're calling it Small Town Stands Behind Stanford." "Heiress." "Dad!" Sarah burst into the garage, waving a paper. "Look what we made!" It was a class project. Dozens of thank you cards from her schoolmates, decorated with drawings of books, penguins, and hearts. "Dear Emily," one read, "thank you for saving our library. Please come back." Jack's phone buzzed with a text from Maria. "She's at the Stanford building in Boston. Board meeting about the merger. Richard's trying to force a vote." He looked at Sarah's hopeful face, at the petition filled with his neighbor's support, at Emily's journal still open on his desk. "Tom, can you watch Sarah?" "Where are you going, Daddy?" Jack knelt beside his daughter. "Remember how Mom always said that sometimes love means fighting for what's right?" Sarah nodded solemnly. "Well, it's time to fight." He looked at her. "Stuffed animals. Think Mr. Waddles and Hope would want to help?" Sarah's eyes lit up. She handed him Hope. "He's good luck," like Emily said. The 3-hour drive to Boston passed in a blur of determination. Jack's truck looked out of place among the sleek cars outside Stanford Industries headquarters, but he didn't care. In the lobby, a security guard blocked his path. "Sir, the board meeting is private. Tell Emily Stanford that Jack Morrison is here with proof of what she's been fighting for." The guard reached for his radio, but a familiar voice cut through the tension. "Let him in." Maria appeared, keycard in hand. "Quickly, they're voting now." The boardroom doors opened to reveal a scene of corporate theater. Richard Stanford at the head of the table, David Hamilton beside him, board members in expensive suits, and Emily, looking trapped but defiant, facing them all. "This is a closed meeting," Richard snapped. "No," Emily stood. "Let him speak." Jack stepped forward, holding the petition, Sarah's cards and Hope the seal. "You want to know who Emily Stanford really is? Look at these." He spread the documents across the polished table. "Every signature here represents someone she helped, not for praise, not for business, but because it was right." "This is irrelevant," David Hamilton interrupted. The merger is about money," Jack continued. "But this," he held up Hope, "this is about love. My daughter named him Hope because that's what Emily gave our town, not just through her trust fund, but through her heart." Emily's eyes filled with tears as she recognized the stuffed seal. "Mr. Morrison," Richard's voice was cold. "My daughter was playing a game in your town, acting out some romantic fantasy." "No, Dad." Emily's voice rang clear. "I was finally being myself, the person Grandmother always knew I could be." She crossed to Jack, taking Hope gently. "You came. Had to. Someone pretty special taught Sarah and me not to give up on love." A board member cleared his throat. "Miss Stanford, about your trust fund maneuver." "It's done." Emily faced the room. "The money is legally bound to protect Milbrook. You can either work with the community or waste resources fighting it. Your choice." Richard Stanford stood, fury and confusion warring on his face. "You would throw away your inheritance for this?" "I'm not throwing it away." Emily took Jack's hand. "I'm investing it in something real, something true." She turned to David Hamilton. "The ring is on your desk. I'm sure you'll find another merger opportunity." "Emily," her father tried. "One last time. You're a Stanford." "Yes," she smiled, "and Grandmother would be proud of how I'm using that name." The boardroom erupted in chaos, but Jack and Emily barely noticed. In his free hand, Jack still held her journal. "You read it?" she asked softly. "Every word. Turns out the woman I fell in love with was real all along." Through the windows, they could see more news vans arriving, drawn by the story of an heiress who chose love over fortune. But the real story was simpler. Two people holding a stuffed seal named Hope, choosing truth over pretense. "Take me home," Emily whispered. Jack smiled. "Sarah's waiting, and Mr. Waddles needs his friend back." Behind them, the corporate world Emily had been born into continued its debate. But she wasn't listening. She was too busy planning her return to a small garage where real wealth was measured in love, trust, and second chances. 2 plane tickets lay on Emily's desk in her childhood bedroom, one to Paris, a peace offering from her father, a chance to think things through away from Jack's influence. The other, a simple economy ticket to Vermont, purchased with the last of her personal credit card's limit. "You don't have to do this," her mother said from the doorway. For once, the ever-present gin glass was absent from her hand. "Your father will forgive you. The Hamilton merger can be salvaged." Emily continued packing, choosing the simplest items from her designer wardrobe. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Mom. I'm choosing happiness." "And what about security? The Stanford name?" "I've never felt more secure than I did in Jack's garage, covered in motor oil, being exactly who I am." She picked up a photograph from her vanity, her grandmother Eleanor at Sarah's age, laughing on a farm, before the Stanford fortune had changed her family's path. "Did you know Grandmother grew up poor?" Emily asked. "She never forgot what real wealth meant. That's why she left me that trust fund. She knew someday I'd understand." Her mother's carefully maintained facade cracked slightly. "I loved your father once, really loved him, before all this became more important than feeling real. It's not too late, Mom. For any of us." A horn honked outside. Maria, waiting to drive Emily to the airport. Time to choose. She grabbed the Vermont ticket, leaving the Paris one behind like a butterfly shedding its cocoon. Her father stood in the foyer, one last obstacle. "If you walk out that door, you're choosing their world over ours." Emily paused, really looking at him. The proud stance that didn't quite hide his loneliness, the wealth that couldn't fill, the emptiness. "I'm choosing love, Dad, something the Stanford fortune can't buy." She hugged him, feeling him stiffen in surprise. "When you're ready to be my father instead of my CEO, you know where to find me." The drive to Milbrook felt like coming home. Maria smiled knowingly as Emily practically bounced in her seat. "Nervous, terrified," Emily admitted. "What if they've changed their minds? What if—" "Look," Maria pointed ahead. They crested the hill overlooking Main Street to find the entire town seemed to be gathered outside Morrison Auto Repair. A banner stretched across the garage door. "Welcome home, Emily." Sarah spotted them first. "She's here." Emily barely had time to step out of the car before small arms wrapped around her waist. "Mr. Waddles missed you so much, and Hope too, and Daddy kept reading your journal every night, and—" Sarah, Jack's voice carried a gentle warning, but his eyes were warm as he approached. Let her breathe. The crowd pressed closer. Mrs. Chen with dumplings, because you're too skinny. Tom with hardware store stories. The librarian with thank you cards from children in the reading program. Speech, someone called out. Emily looked at these people, her people now, and found the words came easily. Someone very wise once told me that true wealth isn't about what you have, but what you give. Standing here, I feel like the richest person in the world, she turned to Jack, because you gave me truth. To Sarah, you gave me hope. To the crowd, you all gave me a home. And we're keeping her, Sarah announced, making everyone laugh. Later, after the impromptu welcome party wound down, Emily sat on the porch swing with Jack, Sarah snoozing between them with Mr. Waddles and Hope. So, Jack said quietly, what happens now? Emily took his hand. Now I learn how to change oil. Properly. Pay taxes like a normal person. Maybe see if the garage needs a full-time bookkeeper. The pay's not great, but the benefits are amazing. She smiled at Sarah. Though we might need a bigger place eventually. 3 people and 2. Stuffed animals make that spare room pretty crowded. Jack's eyes widened at the implication. Eventually? Well, I did just give up $1 billion inheritance. The least you could do is marry me. He laughed, then grew serious. You really don't regret it? Leaving that world behind? Emily looked at their joined hands, at Sarah's peaceful face, at the garage where she'd first learned that love doesn't need luxury to thrive. I gained so much more than I gave up. As if to prove her point, Sarah stirred slightly. Love you, Mommy Emily, she murmured sleepily. And just like that, Emily Stanford, former heiress, future garage bookkeeper and permanent keeper of hope, knew she'd made the right choice. The garage deed sat on their kitchen table, newly printed with both their names, Morrison and Stanford Auto Repair. Emily traced the letters, still amazed at how right they looked together. You sure about the name change? Jack asked, sliding a cup of coffee her way. People are just getting used to calling you Emily instead of Jane. I'm sure. Besides, Stanford means something different in Milbrook now. She was right. In the month since her return, the Stanford name had become associated not with corporate takeovers, but with the community foundation that was helping rebuild Main Street. The hardware store had reopened under local ownership, protected by Emily's trust. Daddy, Emily, we're going to be late, Sarah called from the front door, backpack and stuffed animals at the ready. First day of school butterflies, Jack asked, noting their daughter's excitement. Parent-teacher conference butterflies, Emily corrected. First time I'm going as her... She hesitated. Mom, Jack finished. You're going as her mom. The word still gave Emily goosebumps. Sarah had started using it naturally, as if Emily had always been there. But today would make it official. They were meeting with the school to update Sarah's family records. The garage looked different now, too. Emily's organizational systems had transformed the office, while Jack's expertise kept the mechanical side running smoothly. They'd even hired Tom back from the Stanford Industries Center. He preferred working with family. Ms. Morrison, Sarah's teacher, looked confused when they arrived. I thought I was meeting with... I'm Emily Stanford, she stepped forward. Soon to be Emily Morrison. We're here to update Sarah's records. The teacher's eyes widened with recognition, but Sarah just tugged Emily's hand. Can we show her the picture I drew, the one of all of us? Emily helped Sarah pull out her latest masterpiece, their family portrait, complete with Mr. Waddles and Hope wearing tiny garage coveralls. And see, Sarah pointed proudly, I wrote our names. Daddy, Mommy, Emily, Sarah, and our penguin family. The teacher's confusion melted into understanding as she watched them together. This wasn't a society story or a corporate merger. This was simply love, finding its way home. Later that evening, they tackled their next challenge, moving Emily's things into Jack's house. She hadn't brought much from her old life, but making space meant confronting memories. Where should this go? Jack held up a photo of Lisa. Right where it belongs, Emily said softly. Sarah should always know both her mothers. They worked together, blending their lives like the motor oil and elbow grease that seemed to permanently stain their hands now. Emily's books found homes beside Jack's manuals. Her coffee maker, the one fancy item she'd kept, sat companionably next to his worn toolbox. "Found it!" Sarah's voice rang from the spare room. She emerged with a dusty box labeled Christmas. Inside was the wooden penguin ornament from the Winter Festival, the one they couldn't afford then. Emily had tracked it down, bought it, saved it for this moment. "Now Mr. Waddles and Hope can have a Christmas friend too," Sarah declared. Jack watched them hang it on a shelf, these two pieces of his heart, who had found each other in a blizzard. "You know," he said, "the garage's finances are looking better than ever." Emily smiled. "Amazing what happens when you combine mechanical genius with actual bookkeeping. Think we could manage a real Christmas tree this year? Maybe some new decorations?" Sarah's eyes lit up, but Emily shook her head. "I was thinking we could make our own, as a family. Because that's what they were now, a family built on choice rather than chance, on love rather than obligation. The garage deed proved it. Sarah's school records proved it. And the tiny ring box hidden in Jack's toolbox would soon prove it again. Jack found the ice scraper in his toolbox exactly 1 year after the blizzard that changed everything. The same one he'd used to free Emily from her frozen Mercedes. Instead of throwing it away, he had another idea. "It's perfect, the local," Jula said, examining the tool. "We can melt it down, mix it with the gold, a ring that tells your story." The Winter Festival was back in town, and this time they were all going together. Officially a family. Sarah had spent weeks planning their evening, determined to recreate every moment from that first magical night. "Look," she pointed to the hot chocolate stand. "That's where Emily bought us drinks, and there's where Daddy and Emily danced." Emily squeezed Jack's hand. "Hard to believe it's been a year. A year since you lied about your name," he teased. "A year since I told the most important truth of my life, even if I didn't know it then." They followed Sarah through the festival, retracing their steps. Mr. Waddles and Hope, wearing tiny winter scarves Sarah had knitted, watched from her backpack. The wooden ornament maker was back, his stall now proudly displaying a local business. Protected by Stanford Morrison Foundation sign, he waved as they passed. "Remember when we couldn't afford that penguin?" Sarah asked. "And now we have 3. She was right. The original ornament had been joined by 2 more, marking their growing family's milestones. Near the dance floor, they ran into Mrs. Chen, who insisted on taking their photo. "For the garage wall," she said with a knowing wink at Jack. Emily was about to suggest getting hot chocolate when she noticed Jack had stopped walking. They were in the exact spot where a year ago they'd almost kissed on that first magical night. "Emily Stanford," he began, then corrected. "Himself, Emily, who changed everything. This is where I first knew I was in trouble." Trouble? Because who falls in love with a stranger in a blizzard? Who trusts their heart to someone who appears like magic in a storm? He pulled out a small box. "But sometimes the craziest choices are the wisest ones." Sarah bounced excitedly, clearly in on the plan. She handed Mr. Waddles to Emily, and there, tied around the penguin's neck with a ribbon, was a ring unlike any Emily had ever seen. Silver and steel swirled together, with tiny flecks that caught the light like ice crystals. "Is this the ice scraper that brought you to us? Seemed right to make it part of making you ours forever." Jack took the ring from Mr. Waddles. "So what do you say? Ready to officially become a Morrison?" Emily looked at the ring that represented not wealth or status, but love and rescue and second chances. "On one condition. Name it. The garage stays Stanford Morrison, because I'm proud of who I became here with you." "Deal." He slipped the ring on her finger. "Though you should know Sarah has one more condition." Their daughter stepped forward, solemnly. "Mr. Waddles and Hope want to be ring-bearers." Emily knelt and gathered Sarah close. "I wouldn't have it any other way." The festival crowds had noticed what was happening, and soon they were surrounded by their community. Tom from the garage, the librarian, Mrs. Chen, with happy tears in her eyes. Someone started playing their song from that first dance. "May I?" Jack held out his hand. As they swayed together, snow beginning to fall just like that first night, Emily caught a glimpse of a familiar figure at the edge of the crowd. Her father, standing awkwardly in his expensive coat. She'd sent him an invitation to visit, but hadn't really expected him to come. Their relationship was still complicated, but him being here, seeing her joy, was a start. The ring caught the festival lights, ice scraper and precious metal combined into something unique and beautiful, like their family, like their love, like the choice to believe in second chances. "Happy anniversary," Jack whispered. Emily looked at her daughter dancing with her stuffed animals, at their friends and neighbors celebrating with them, at her father taking his first tentative steps toward understanding. "Happy beginning," she corrected, because that's what this was, not an ending to her old life, but the start of something real and true and lasting, like a blizzard that brings not destruction but transformation, like an ice scraper that becomes a symbol of eternal love. The family portrait captured them all in their natural habitat. The garage, Emily in her coveralls, Jack with a smudge of grease on his cheek, Sarah between them holding Mr. Waddles and Hope, who now sported matching Stanford Morrison auto repair patches on their well-loved fur. 1 year after their winter festival wedding, the photograph sat proudly on their mantel alongside memories of their journey, the wooden penguin ornaments, the ice scraper wedding ring, and a picture of Lisa smiling down on the family she'd left behind. "Mom, Dad, the new sign is here!" Sarah's voice carried through the garage's open door. Outside, Tom and the installation crew were mounting the updated business sign. Stanford Morrison Family Auto Repair, serving Milbrook since 1985. Below it, in smaller letters, "Where every rescue leads to love." "Bit sentimental, isn't it?" Jack teased, wrapping his arms around Emily from behind. "Says the man who made me a ring out of an ice scraper." Their comfortable banter was interrupted by the rumble of an expensive car, Richard Stanford's latest model, pulling into the parking lot. "Grandpa's here!" Sarah ran to greet him, her stuffed animals bouncing in her backpack. Emily watched her father emerge, still looking somewhat out of place in his tailored suit, but trying. He'd been coming by more often, learning to be a grandfather instead of a CEO. Last month, he'd even helped Sarah with her business math homework, though his suggestion that she leverage her assets to get more allowance hadn't quite aligned with Jack and Emily's parenting style. "I brought something," Richard said, pulling out an old photograph. "Found it in your grandmother's things." The image showed Eleanor Stanford in overalls, working on an old tractor. On the back was written, "Sometimes the richest moments are the simplest ones." "She would have loved this place," Emily said softly. "She would have loved who you've become," her father replied, watching Sarah show Mr. Waddles the new sign. Inside, the garage hummed with activity. The Stanford Morrison Foundation had helped other local businesses thrive, and their reputation for honest work brought customers from 3 counties. They'd even hired 2 new mechanics, though Jack still insisted on personally handling their oldest customers' cars. Emily's desk held a new addition, a small ultrasound photo hidden in her drawer. They were waiting to tell Sarah until after the first trimester, but Mr. Waddles and Hope would soon have a real baby to watch over. "Mrs. Chen's car is ready," Jack called, wiping his hands on a rag. "Sarah, want to help me explain the repairs?" Their daughter bounded over, always eager to learn the family business. She'd recently declared her intention to be the best mechanic bookkeeper ever, just like Mom and Dad. Emily watched them together, Jack patiently teaching Sarah about engines, while Mrs. Chen beamed with grandmotherly pride. This was wealth that couldn't be measured in dollars. Love, purpose, belonging. The wall behind her desk held their collection of family drawings, Sarah's artistic skills growing along with their family. The latest showed 5 figures in front of the garage, the new baby already included, though Sarah didn't know it yet. Mr. Waddles and Hope stood guard on either side, their little patch-covered uniforms carefully detailed. "Hey!" Jack's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "You okay?" Emily touched the ice scraper ring on her finger, remembering that desperate night in the blizzard. Just thinking about how sometimes the worst storms lead us exactly where we need to be. "Speaking of storms," Sarah piped up, "can we tell the story again? About how you found each other?" It was her favorite bedtime story, though she now insisted on adding all the parts Mommy Emily left out the first time. "Well," Jack began, gathering them close, "it was the worst blizzard Vermont had seen in years." Outside, the new sign caught the afternoon sun, casting a warm glow over their family name. Inside, love that had begun with a rescue continued to grow, proving that sometimes the richest fairy tales aren't about princesses in towers, but about hearts brave enough to choose love over fortune, truth over pretense, and the simple miracle of finding home in a storm.